Hey everybody, welcome back to the Court of Random Opinion. My name is Lauren Neidigh. Yesterday, the New York Times filed a lawsuit against Wayfarer Studios, which is the studio that was co-founded by Justin Baldoni and Steve Sarowitz. The New York Times were among the defendants named in the complaint when Wayfarer countersued Blake Lively and others. So this was filed in New York State Court. There's not too much to say here yet because this is just an initial complaint. But they're basically looking to get attorney's fees and costs related to that lawsuit. This is an action brought pursuant to New York Civil Rights Law Sections 70A and 76A to recover costs, fees, and expenses incurred by the Times in the defense of a defamation action brought by Wayfarer and parties associated by Wayfarer. And people are now speculating, of course, that this is why the New York Times just asked Judge Lyman to enter a final judgment, which I believe he still has not done. Strategic lawsuits against public participation, SLAPP suits, are lawsuits used to inhibit the exercise of free speech and harass publishers by forcing them to expend time and resource on baseless litigation. And remember, Leslie Sloan also tried to bring up anti-SLAPP when she filed her motion for fees and costs, after she was also off the hook when the countersuit was dismissed. New York's anti-SLAPP law offers redress to targets of SLAPP suits. And in 2020, the governor signed a bill that had substantially expanded New York's existing anti-SLAPP law. This was to provide greater protection to publishers against frivolous litigation and tended to silence their exercise of the rights of free speech and petition about matters of public interest. So here's the thing with that. They did some pretty shady stuff. Like, their journalistic practices in all of that were disgusting garbage. Obviously, I understand why anti-SLAPP is in place, but I hardly think all the New York Times did was exercise their rights of free speech. I think what they did was sketchy and gross. It just unfortunately doesn't seem to be illegal. You're never going to convince me that it was okay for them to take text messages obtained by a shady lawsuit that was at best improper. I'm talking about Van Zandt. Go over those things for months and months, pick things out to make it look a certain way, and then give Justin Baldoni and his side little to no time to respond on a weekend before Christmas. That was ridiculous, but unfortunately not illegal. Just terrible journalistic practice if you actually want the truth of the matter, which they didn't. They just wanted to be the ones to break this story because they thought they were getting their hands on a new Me Too thing. In my opinion, this has turned out quite differently, but since the New York Times and the TMZs of the world only cover one side of the story with any sort of real follow-up or attention to detail, there are still many people in the public who believe things exactly as they wrote them, which is a damn shame. All right. Under New York's anti-SLAPP law, defendants in lawsuits involving public petition and participation may now file an action to recover damages, including costs and attorney's fees, from any person who commenced or continued such an action without a substantial basis in fact and law. The anti-SLAPP law also provides for compensatory and punitive damages against plaintiffs who, like Wayfarer, commence or continue meritless legal claims for the purpose of harassing, intimidating, punishing, or otherwise maliciously inhibiting the free exercise of speech. The thing is, I don't think it was meritless. I don't believe it was ever said that they were meritless. I'm going to have to go back and read the entire judgment, which I can't do right now because I have work in a little bit, but I will. The anti-SLAPP law applies to lawsuits targeting any communication in a place open to the public, or a public forum in connection with an issue of public interest, or any other lawful conduct in furtherance of the exercise of the constitutional right of free speech in connection with an issue of public interest, with the term public interest defined broadly to mean any subject other than a purely private matter. It is now well established that news coverage of matters of public interest fall within the scope of the law. Again, the issue, in my opinion, is not that they talked about the lawsuit. It's not that they talked about basically only her side of the story. The problem in my eyes is that it was framed in a dishonest way, not by mistake. But how are you supposed to prove that? The countersuit got thrown out. I'm not going to go over the facts so much here because we've heard the details of this story so many times. But I'm sure I'll be going over this some more in detail later whenever their response comes out. They say the Times incurred not less than $150,000 in legal fees and costs for defending against the lawsuit, which had no basis in law or fact. Their cause of action is violation of New York Civil Rights Law, Sections 70A and 76A. So they want the court to declare that the New York Times is entitled to its reasonable costs, attorney's fees, and disbursements. And just from a purely non-legal standpoint, yes, I could see this going in their favor. Like I said, it's not that I don't think that what they did was wrong. I think it was terrible. But it was unfortunately not illegal. So I think the punishment for that kind of behavior has to be like social and business consequences. You have to stop supporting them, stop subscribing to them. That's all you can really do. You can explain to people why you don't think you can trust their reporting and why you think their journalistic practices are terrible. But unfortunately, I didn't really think they were going to see any legal consequences for any of that. As for getting their fees back, yes, just the way this is laid out, I'm not thrilled about it, but I can kind of see it going their way. But whenever Wayfarer comes out with a response, I'm sure we'll go over this some more with Omar or one of the other attorneys who are covering this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll let you know when anything else comes up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.